Subliminal messages? Let's talk about that. Afternoon class. It's your teacher, Mr. Halverson, here at the home of the Rouse School Mustangs. I'm in my secret lair hidden in the basement of the school, down by the Rancor pit, by the pool that's in our basement, as we talk about episode 5, Subliminal Messages. Subliminal messages is actually nothing new in music. We've used music for so many different things throughout the course of time. We use it to express happiness. We use it to express sadness. We use it to get people excited and happy. We use it to rally people. We use it to comfort people. And today we're going to talk about how it's used to convey subliminal messages as well, too. There are some very accurate things about how music has been used to convey subliminal messages. And there are some just absolute wackadoodle things, that's right, wackadoodle, conspiracy theories in regards to pieces of music, the art used on the cover of albums, which I hope is still a thing the older that you guys get. I hope that you're still buying CDs when you're in your 30s. I don't know if that's going to be a thing anymore or not. But cover art that would be used for these different albums, literal records, and then we've got cassette tapes, which I don't know if you know what those are anymore. And we've got compact discs and now MP3s. People looking at all of those things going, oh, there's some secret hidden meaning within this. And for some of those things, we think, well, that's just crazy. But in one of them that we're going to talk about, an incredible amount of people got sucked into that. But let's start with something that was accurate. Let's start with something that was true in regards to subliminal messages. We're going to go back to the time of slavery. Okay, 1850s. Now, slavery is taking place longer than that, but I'm taking us back to this specific time frame because of the use of this piece of music. 1850s going on to the 1860s. 1861, the American Civil War starts. 1865, we're finally able to bring it to an end. And slavery is one of the huge things that's being talked about during this time frame. And we know that there are things such as the Underground Railroad, where they're trying to help slaves escape to freedom. We think of Harriet Tubman. We think about these different conductors, as they sometimes get referred to today, people who are meeting with slaves to help them escape north to freedom. Music was used within the enslaved communities to express comfort and peace with each other, but also to convey secret messages. And for anyone who has been in Mrs. Hill's class the past several years, one of your readers' theaters talks about a piece of music that's used for that very same thing. Today, we're going to look at a piece called Follow the Drinking Gourd. Now, let's take a look at the lyrics first so that we can understand the rest of the story that goes along with it, okay? The first verse goes, when the sun goes back and the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. The old man is awaiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. So that's verse 1. We're going into the chorus. And as you know, as we've been learning about music these past 5 weeks now, that chorus, if written well, conveys kind of the main idea of the song that all of the verses should be pointing to. And that rule follows with this piece of music. So we should pay attention to this chorus line. Follow the drinking gourd, follow the drinking gourd, for the old man is awaiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Okay, that's what we're always being pointed back to. Next verse. The riverbed makes a mighty fine road, dead trees to show you the way, and its left foot, peg foot, traveling on, follow the drinking gourd. The chorus again, on to the next verse. The river ends between two hills, follow the drinking gourd. There's another river on the other side, follow the drinking gourd. Back to the chorus, and coming into the final verse that we've got here today. I thought I heard the angels say, follow the drinking gourd. The stars in the heavens gonna show you the way, follow the drinking gourd. Now that's the last verse, which is telling us to follow the drinking gourd, putting us back to the chorus line, talking to us about follow the drinking gourd. Well, what in the heck is a drinking gourd? Okay, so plantations Farms. We think about farms today. Okay, a lot of times if we're working on a tractor, we've got some kind of a water bottle. You might have a thermos. When I was a kid, we had leftover Clorox bleach jugs that my grandmother cleaned the dickens out of that we filled up with water in Williston as we drove to Wild Rose, North Dakota, where our family farm is. And that's what we drank out of all day long, are these old bleach jugs. Well, back during the time of the Civil War, tractors weren't a thing. We didn't have these Clorox bleach bottles. They had other stuff, but probably the most common way that you would get yourself a drink on the farm is a bucket, either from a well or from the river or a spring or something like that. And if you have a bunch of people that are drinking from that, you would use some kind of a dipper, okay? Now, a dipper is like a long-handled spoon that's got like a big bowl thing on the end that you'd get a nice drink of water and be able to sip it down. Well, a lot of those dippers are made out of gourds, where there's like a long stem and then there was like a bulb at the end that they could cut in half and scoop out all the seeds and stuff. And what you're left with is a bowl at the end. So these drinking gourds, it's a literal drinking gourd. You're dipping it in the water and you're getting the water. What does that have to do with the song? Well, all right. So the very last verse says, I thought I heard the angels say, follow the drinking gourd. The stars in the heaven gonna show you the way. Follow the drinking gourd. And the chorus line is telling us to follow the drinking gourd. Final verse tells us where we're gonna get shown about this, okay? For time infinite back within human history, people have used the stars as a means of navigation, or in other words, being able to find their way at nighttime. In fact, that was a skill that I was taught in the Boy Scouts. And as an adult, within the history things that I've done, when I've been in the wilds of Montana, Missouri River breaks, or wherever I am at nighttime, and I am doing these things where I'm traveling at nighttime, I have used the stars to navigate my way. And this is how you do that. You can, as long as it's a clear night or clear enough, and you can see the Big Dipper, you can find out which way north is. I've got a graphic that's going to pop up here. So the Big Dipper looks like, a dipper that you would dip in to be able to take a drink out of. It looks like it's got a spoon end on it type of a thing. The outside edge, the outside two stars, if you follow a line that makes, actually points to where the North Star is. What direction did the slaves need to go in order to be able to get to freedom? They gotta go north. So the Big Dipper, that's the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. The chorus line, all the verses are pointing to that chorus line. Follow the drinking gourd, follow the drinking gourd, follow the drinking gourd. If you don't remember anything else from the song, follow the drinking gourd. Why? The drinking gourd's the Big Dipper. It points to the North Star. North is where I need to go. I might run into a whole bunch of chaos and problems along my way, but I know as long as I keep on going that direction, I'm eventually going to get to freedom. Now, we get some hints in here as to when this is supposed to take place. In the first verse, it talks about when the sun goes back and the first quail calls. That's taking place during that time frame anyway, towards the tail end of winter, the beginning part of spring. Okay, so this is when we're supposed to be doing this, or this is a better time for you to go on doing this. And we see the riverbed makes a mighty fine road, dead trees to show you the way, and its left foot, peg foot traveling on, follow the drinking gourd. This brings us into who the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom, as the lyrics go. Okay, now this we can't prove for sure. And this part of the history and not necessarily conspiracy, but legend that goes along with it pops up in the 1920s as songs like this are being collected and preserved in collections. Okay, there's a character associated with this known as Peg Leg Joe. Now, and in theory, Peg Leg Joe was a kind of a journeyman worker, okay, traveling from plantation to plantation, doing different odd jobs, helping build things and fix things. And while he's there, he's teaching the slaves the song, The Drinking Gourd, okay? The verse, the riverbed makes a mighty fine road, dead trees will show you the way, and its left foot, peg foot traveling on, follow the drinking gourd. If he's the old man, that lets us know that Peg Leg Joe, okay, lost part of his right foot. That's why he's got a peg leg. So if it's in the tail end of winter, beginning part of spring, there would be a definite trail that you could see along the riverbanks there where you'll see a left footprint and a peg leg. Peg Leg Joe is showing you the way. heading north. But if you forget that and can't find that, remember, follow the drinking gourd, the Big Dipper, it's going to point you north. Another possibility that gets talked about as well, too, is on those dead trees, someone would scratch in there a left foot and a peg leg. We can't substantiate any of that, but what we do know is that during that time of the year historically, we see where a lot of slaves are trying to escape to freedom, and we do know that this song is being used to tell people how to navigate at nighttime to be able to get their way to freedom. And we see that in so many of what get referred to as black spirituals. These spirituals, oftentimes there is a religious context from a Christian point of view that is being sung about by the slaves to convey secret messages with each other, but to also convey comfort in a way that the people that are around them don't know what they're talking about. We do know that those things actually did take place. So subliminal messages in music, heck yeah, they are there. And this is one that got used very well trying to help get slaves in the South to freedom in the North. That's pretty cool. So I've got a video clip here performed by Mr. Eric Bibb. He's playing on guitar. He does a wonderful job. Different type of musical style that you might not be used to, but it's pretty cool. So I hope that you enjoy that. Okay, that's going to lead us into another thing that kind of goes into conspiracy that we can't exactly substantiate, but there's a lot of evidence that goes to support the case of what's supposedly going on. Okay, we're going to go to Russia. We're going to talk about a fellow by the name of Dmitri Shostakovich. And Dmitri Shostakovich writes this piece of music, his Fifth Symphony. And in particular, we're going to look at the fourth movement. So it's this big piece of music that's composed of four parts, and we're talking about the fourth part, the very last part. And that part in the music is called the Allegro non troppo, and it's also referred to as the finale because the finale is, that's the end, that's the ending, and it's the last piece of that symphony that's performed. Now, it's got kind of a dark and angry sound, almost scary. The beginning part, you've got these loud brass instruments, trombones and tubas are blasting, and you've got strings, violins, violas, and stuff like that, and cellos that are playing as well too. And that theme goes and it gets softer, gets louder. There's a part that almost sounds like you're floating on a boat on a river, and then it comes back in and gets angry sounding, and then it changes. The entire feeling changes from like this angry, sad, scary thing to like there might be some hope here, to all of a sudden, hey, this sounds happy. And the same melody line that we heard that sounded angry and scary before and sad now actually sounds happy. And we can recognize it as that original melody that the feeling has changed on. And there's like this trumpet fanfare playing this high A over and over and over again at the end, where the symphony is coming in together, and there's this timpani going back and forth between two notes. A timpani is a drum that we can have play a specific note. We hear this boom, 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 which slows down at the end. And there are 8 or so bass drum hits that oftentimes get covered up. That's part of the conspiracy of this piece of music. But it ends, and you're like, wow, that was fantastic. This huge fanfare, like there was a success, like someone won something, some struggle was triumphed over, is the feeling that you get at the tail end of this piece of music. The conspiracy involving this is that it is about the leaders in Russia just making life miserable for the people there and just destroying their lives. Now, there are some fairly big pieces of evidence that would lead us to believe that this is true with Shostakovich's work, the tail end of his Fifth Symphony. Number one, it's taking place in Russia, and the time frame that this is being written and where he's growing up in is in the 1920s, okay? They've just gotten on with World War I, and I mean, all kinds of bad stuff has been taking place previously with the czars, and people's farms are being burned, and everybody's miserable, and the leaders are just terrible jerks to the people, and they just want to have a go at it, man. They just want to have some success. They want to be able to live life and to be happy. And now they're gearing up for, they don't realize it yet, but they're coming into World War II, which is also just going to be an incredibly bad time of history for them. So there's all of this sad stuff taking place to the Russian people, and they did have a number of leaders that just kind of keep on knocking the people down type of a thing. We do know that that is taking place. We also know that there's a movement within music at that time in places like Russia to play these, what sometimes get referred to as national pieces. Now, Because something's a national piece doesn't make it a bad thing, okay? Bad people do bad things with good stuff, okay? And that's what makes something bad. Not that the thing itself is inherently bad, but people can take that good thing and use it wrongly and turn it into something bad. And that kind of it gets done with some of this music. So the idea is we're going to create this music that makes us all happy about where we are and happy about the leaders that we've got, which isn't always the case. And in fact, it was a very dangerous time for different, for some specific people while that's going on: religious leaders, artists, musicians, and teachers who felt contrary to what the people's leaders were doing. In fact, some of them would disappear. And by disappear, that means that they probably were taken someplace and killed, unfortunately. Okay, this is taking place. This is the environment that Shostakovich grew up in, and it's incredibly sad. So we see that as being a possible thing. He's also involved with this piece of music that is talking about a genius painter and a barbarian painter. And this genius painter paints this beautiful painting, and it's fantastic, and people love it. But this barbarian painter, okay, this guy who he might just be a jerk, he might be an actual painter, maybe he's not, but this barbarian painter comes and paints over it, tries to cover up the hard work of this genius painter, okay, and the beauty that it is, so that all the people can see is this monstrosity that's left. But by the end of the piece of music, all of that paint has fallen off, and people can see the beauty that's behind it. A conspiracy tied in with that is that Shostakovich was the genius artist, and that the leader in Russia at the time, Mr. Joseph Stalin, who was an incredibly bad dude, was the barbarian painter. It all ties in there. But it'd be nice if we had some additional information, and we do. Now, Shostakovich had a good friend, a guy by the name of Mstislav Rostropovich, and I apologize if I've butchered his first name. Okay, he was a good friend of Shostakovich. As time goes on, now Rostropovich is a conductor. Okay, Shostakovich is a composer. Composers are people who write music. A conductor is a people who conduct music. Okay, technically, I have been a conductor because I will conduct us while we sing, but I don't do it anything like what these other people who do it for a living do. Okay, so he's a conductor. Rostropovich is a conductor, and he conducts several different performances of of Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony. Depending on where it was performed and when it was performed, oftentimes dictated how those 8 bass drums at the end of that piece of music got played. Okay, in Russia, oftentimes that was subdued, and it was buried underneath that timpani part. But you go to London where it gets performed, you go to the United States where it gets performed, and those bass drums, by golly, they go to town and beat the ever-loving dickens out of this huge, massive bass drum so that people can hear that. Rostropovich says that Shostakovich had a hidden meaning stuck in there. So all those pieces together, can we prove it definitively? No. But there's an awful lot of evidence that goes to support the idea that Shostakovich was trying to get a message out. Because Shostakovich thought, you can't stop the music. You can't stop what you can do with that. So I've got the next video that's going to be in here as well is from, believe it or not, the Moscow City Symphony. So it's being performed in Russia, of all places, which makes sense because Shostakovich is a wonderful Russian composer. And it's conducted by Dmitry Jurowski. Now, time has moved on. This is on into the 2000s when this particular performance takes place. They do bring out those 8 bass drum notes at the end. So you're going to be able to hear that. So remember, it starts kind of dark and scary and angry, and it changes, gets louder, gets softer. There's a spot that it almost feels like you're floating on a boat in a river a little bit, maybe at nighttime. And then it comes back in, and then it starts to change like a struggle is being triumphed over, and then you start hearing this fanfare thing at the end, and you'll hear those 8 bass drum beats at the tail end of that. So that'll be pretty cool. The last thing, I'm just going to have you watch the video, and it's more contemporary, and it involves a group that you probably have heard of called the Beatles. Okay, now there's this huge conspiracy that takes place about the Beatles, in particular one of their members, okay, Mr. Paul McCartney, who, by the way, after the Beatles breaks up, goes and starts his own group and gives us a couple pieces of music. The conspiracy is that somewhere in the 1960s, Paul McCartney had actually died. They found someone who is a lookalike, who is also a musician who could mimic his voice, and has been performing with him ever since. And people have looked at the album covers, have looked at lyrics, and we're dealing with records here, sometimes called vinyls or LPs, where they would play them backwards and find secret meanings. And just watch the video because they do a much better job of explaining this. Obviously, Paul McCartney did not die. Paul McCartney is still with us going strong today. Full disclosure, I am not a fan of the Beatles at all. Some of their music I like, some of it I don't, but I can take it or I can leave it. And Paul McCartney kind of goes the same way with me. He ends up writing Simply Having a Wonderful Christmas Time, which in my opinion is one of the best examples of what a waste of a song is. It's a terrible Christmas song. However, I really do like his Live and Let Die song, which gets used in the James Bond film Live and Let Die, which has nothing to do at all with Paul McCartney having died, because that hasn't taken place yet. So check the video on that. So that's all that I've got for you today. Kind of looking at the crazy side of music a little bit today, but we see where there is some credence to some of these things, and we can see where people have taken it way off the deep end, and we see how it was such an important part, though, too, of the history that we have here in the United States. So that's all I've got for you today. I'll catch you guys next week. I've got something fun, hopefully in the works for next week that I'm really hoping comes together for us for good mythical music. But I will see you all again on Monday in the next video for the Can't Stop the Music Challenge. But before I go, let's not forget, number 1, be helpful around the house, both today and every day. Number 2, be sure you give your folks a hug. 3, tell someone you love them. And 4, man, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys at some point when we get done with this Education in Exile. You have a good Mythical Thursday.